A massive 7.4 magnitude earthquake has rocked Taiwan. At least 7 people, injuring hundreds more and causing heavy damage to buildings.
Imagine waking up to the earth shaking beneath your feet, buildings collapsing around you, and a massive tsunami that's destroying everything in its wake. This was a terrifying reality for residents of Taiwan when the island was struck by a strong earthquake for the first time in decades. As the world watches, emergency crews scramble to rescue survivors trapped beneath rubble, while communities grapple with the aftermath of this seismic event. Is this a recurrence of the 1999 Taiwan earthquake? How many lives were lost or injured? Join us on a riveting exploration of the devastating Taiwan earthquake that shook buildings to rubble and unleashed a catastrophic tsunami. Taiwan buildings, shaken by a terrifying earthquake. A powerful earthquake rocked the entire island of Taiwan early Wednesday, collapsing buildings in a southern city and creating a tsunami that washed ashore on southern Japanese islands. A 5-story building in lightly populated Hualien appeared heavily damaged, collapsing its first floor and leaving the rest leaning at a 45-degree angle. In the capital Taipei, tiles fell from older buildings and within some newer office complexes. Train service was suspended across the island of 23 million people, as was the subway service in Taipei. But things quickly returned to normal in the capital, with children going to school and the morning commute appearing to be normal. The Japan Meteorological Agency said a tsunami wave of 30 centimeters, about 1 foot, was detected on the coast of Yonaguni Island about 15 minutes after the quake struck. JAMA said waves likely also hit the coasts of Miyako and Yaeyama Islands. Japan's self-defense force sent aircraft to gather information about the tsunami impact around the Okinawa region and was preparing shelters for evacuees if necessary. Taiwan's Earthquake Monitoring Agency gave the magnitude as 7.2, while the U.S. Geological Survey put it at 7.4. It struck at 7:58 a.m., about 18 kilometers south-southwest of Hualien, and was about 35 kilometers or 21 miles deep. The head of Taiwan's Earthquake Monitoring Bureau, Wu Qianfu, said effects were detected as far away as Kinmen, a Taiwanese-controlled island off the coast of China. Multiple aftershocks were felt in Taipei in the hour after the initial quake. The USGS said one of the subsequent quakes was 6.5 magnitude and 11.8 kilometers, around 7 miles deep. The Pacific Tsunami Warning Center said there was no tsunami threat to Hawaii or the U.S. Pacific territory of Guam. The quake was believed to be the biggest in Taiwan since a temblor in 1999 caused extensive damage. Taiwan lies along the Pacific Ring of Fire, the line of seismic faults encircling the Pacific Ocean, where most of the world's earthquakes occur. Do these earthquakes mean that there are many trembling yet to earthquakes for the people of Taiwan? Let's take a closer look at Taiwan's preparedness for earthquakes. How prepared is Taiwan for severe earthquakes? Taiwan lies along the Pacific Ring of Fire, the line of seismic faults encircling the Pacific Ocean, where most of the world's earthquakes occur. The area is particularly vulnerable to temblors due to the tension accumulated from the interactions of 2 tectonic plates, the Philippine Sea Plate and the Eurasian Plate, which may lead to sudden releases in the form of earthquakes. The region's mountainous landscape can magnify the ground shaking, leading to landslides. Several such landslides occurred on Taiwan's eastern coast near the epicenter of Wednesday's quake near eastern Hualien County, when falling debris hit tunnels and highways, crushing vehicles and causing several deaths. How prepared is Taiwan? Wednesday's earthquake measured 7.2, according to Taiwan's Earthquake Monitoring Agency, while the U.S. Geological Survey put it at 7.4. It damaged several buildings in Hualien, but caused only minor losses in the capital Taipei, despite being strongly felt there. The earthquake hit in the middle of the morning rush hour, yet only slightly derailed the regular commute. Just minutes later, parents were again walking their children to school and workers driving to offices. According to Stephen Gao, a seismologist and professor at Missouri University of Science and Technology, Taiwan's earthquake preparedness is among the most advanced in the world. According to him, the island has implemented strict building codes, a world-class seismological network, and widespread public education campaigns on earthquake safety. Also, the government continually revises the level of quake resistance required of new and existing buildings, which may increase construction costs, and offers subsidies to residents willing to check their building's quake resistance. In fact, following a 2016 quake in Taiwan, on the island's southwestern coast, 5 people involved in the construction of a 17-story high-rise apartment building that was the only major structure to have collapsed, killing dozens, were found guilty of negligence and given prison sentences. Taiwan also pushed quake drills at schools and workplaces, while public media and cell phones regularly carry notices about earthquakes and safety. Gao also mentioned that these measures have significantly enhanced Taiwan's resilience to earthquakes, helping to mitigate the potential for catastrophic damage and loss of life. However, despite their preparedness, the visitor seems to find solace in the pillars of Taiwan homes and the rails of Taiwan streets. Let's journey through the greatest earthquake in the history of Taiwan. How a severe earthquake in 1999 struck Taiwan. Taiwan and its surrounding waters have registered about 2,000 earthquakes, with a magnitude of 4.0 or greater since 1980, and more than 100 earthquakes with a magnitude above 5.5, according to the USGS. The island's worst quake struck on September 21, 1999, with a magnitude of 7.7. It claimed 2,400 lives, injured around 100,000, and destroyed thousands of buildings. It was widely called the 1999 Jiji earthquake. The earthquake occurred in Jiji, also called Chichi, Nantou County, Taiwan, on the 21st of September 1999. 2,415 people were killed, 11,305 injured, and $300 billion worth of damage was done. It is the second deadliest earthquake in Taiwan's recorded history, after the 1935 Shinchiku Taichu earthquake. Rescue groups from around the world joined local relief workers and the Taiwanese military in digging out survivors, clearing rubble, restoring essential services, and distributing food and other aid to the more than 100,000 people made homeless by the quake. The disaster, dubbed the quake of the century by the local media, had a profound effect on the economy of the island and the consciousness of the people, and dissatisfaction with the government's performance in reacting to it was said by some commentators to be a factor in the unseating of the ruling Kuomintang Party in the 2000 presidential election. The world saw Taiwan face its biggest disaster. Let's delve into how lives and properties were rocked by the catastrophic earthquake that shattered lives and landscapes and reduced hundreds of buildings to rubble, forever altering the fabric of the island's communities. Exploring the natural disaster that hit Taiwan in September 1999. Damage caused by the earthquake included 2,415 deaths, 29 missing, and 11,305 severely wounded, with 51,711 buildings destroyed, 53,768 buildings severely damaged, and a total of 300 billion Taiwan dollars, $10 billion, worth of damage. Power was cut to a large proportion of the island, due to damage to power stations and transmission stations, and the automatic shutdown of Taiwan's 3 nuclear power plants, which were restarted 2 days later. National electricity provider Taipower stated that a day after the quake, power had been restored to 59% of the country. 102 major bridges were badly damaged, with many having to be torn down. The Central Cross Island Highway, at the time the only major complete route across the mountains in central Taiwan, was badly damaged. Subsequent storm damage and the high cost of restoration means that the highway remains partially closed as of 2018. There were a total of 132 landslides during the main quake and the aftershocks, some causing loss of life as rockfalls crushed houses. 870 schools were affected, with 125 severely damaged, closing many down for months or even permanently in a few cases. In Nantou County, towns such as Puli suffered heavy damage, and 846 people couldn't survive it. 153 went missing, and 1,889 sustained injuries. Due to the relatively remote location of many of the affected settlements, aid from the central government took some time to reach some survivors. About 80% of houses in Zhongliao were severely damaged or destroyed. At least 1,074 lost their lives, and 3,648 with injuries were reported in Taichung County, where 3,211 houses were destroyed. The port of Taichung, one of Taiwan's major commercial harbors, was badly damaged and had to be temporarily closed. In Taipei City, far from the epicenter of the quake, buildings were shaken, but just one of them, that's the 12-story Tongxing building, collapsed as a result of the tremor. 87 lost their lives in the rubble of the building, which was later found to be unsoundly built, with structural pillars and beams stuffed with plastic bottles and newspaper instead of brick and concrete. Blame for the collapse was leveled by survivors at both the construction company that built the high-rise and the local government for LAX enforcement of building codes and safety standards. 5 people were indicted in the wake of the disaster. It is critical to know that not only are lives and properties gone, but the quake also wreaked havoc on the country's economy. Let's explore how the quake left a lasting financial scar on the Taiwan economy. Taiwan's economy drops due to earthquake. The Taiwan Stock Exchange was closed for business for 5 days following the earthquake. A significant proportion of the world supply of computer memory chips was at the time made in Taiwan, and the 6-day shutdown of Hsinchu Science Park and other factories resulting from the quake caused computer memory prices to triple on world markets. With Taiwan struggling to recover from the aftereffects of the 1997 Asian financial crisis, the economic damage of the earthquake was a great cause for concern, with estimates that the total cost would be some 10% of the entire gross domestic product of the country in 1999. This is not all. More menace hugged the people of Taiwan more dearly. Other disasters the media didn't show you, plus the rescue efforts. The immediate rescue efforts were still ongoing when public anger began to grow at the shoddy construction that many felt was responsible for the high number of casualties. Legal building codes, enforcement of those codes, and the construction companies themselves all came in for criticism. Constructors and architects of modern buildings that collapsed were detained by the authorities, their assets frozen, and travel documents seized. One of the issues highlighted after the quake was open ground floors in high-rise buildings with little structural support. This led to the ground floor collapsing first in a quake, either toppling the other floors or starting a pancake collapse. Buildings in Taiwan over 50 meters tall require a peer review process. No building that had undergone this process collapsed, contrasting with several dramatic structural failures just under 50 meters in height. However, immediately following the earthquake, an emergency cabinet meeting was convened to discuss how to tackle the aftermath. That same day, the ROC military was mobilized with large numbers of conscripted soldiers heading to stricken regions to assist in distributing emergency supplies, clearing roads, and rescuing people trapped in the rubble. Helicopters were used to evacuate injured people from mountainous regions to hospitals and to supply food to communities inaccessible by road. The military also assumed the leading role in recovering those whose lives were lost from damaged structures. One of the last people to be rescued was a 6-year-old boy pulled alive from the rubble of his collapsed home in Taichung County by a team of South Korean and Japanese search and rescue workers, some 88 hours after the quake. Even later, nearly 130 hours after the earthquake, 2 brothers emerged alive from the ruins of the Tongxing building in Taipei, to the astonishment of rescuers. The brothers survived on the water sprayed from fire hoses, rotten fruit, and their urine. Yes, their urine. You heard that right. At the time, Taiwan seemed to be a friend of many nations. They were rallied around by several countries, including countries you could never think of. Allied nations rally behind Taiwan. There was widespread sympathy throughout the international community for those affected by the earthquake, and over 700 rescue workers from more than 20 countries aided in the immediate aftermath. Initially, Taiwan's isolated diplomatic situation caused a delay in a response from the United Nations, which abides by the One China policy, and so chose not to act without the approval of the Beijing government because of its geopolitical clout. Canada provided a 5-member volunteer search and rescue team from Abbotsford, British Columbia, under the umbrella of a private company, and supported by the local Taiwanese community, provided search and rescue services for 96 hours. In extreme benevolence, China, despite that the relations between the two sides had been particularly strained shortly before the earthquake, with tensions high over the impending presidential elections in Taiwan. General Secretary of the Communist Party, Jiang Zemin, sparked hope of an improvement in relations when he expressed the sorrow of the mainland Chinese at the news of the disaster, and stated that they were willing to offer any possible assistance to alleviate quake-caused losses. Jiang went on to say that compatriots of the two sides are as closely linked as flesh and blood, and that the catastrophe and agony of our Taiwan compatriots influences the hearts of all Chinese. However, after a few days, the Taipei government was accusing Beijing of exploiting the earthquake for political ends and blocking speedy assistance from the international community to get to those in need. A Russian flight carrying search and rescue personnel was refused permission to cross Chinese airspace on its way to Taiwan, and the PRC insisted that any attempts to send aid to Taiwan from other nations needed the blessing of the Beijing government first, slowing the arrival of international help. A few years later, according to an interview, the blockade news mentioned above was denied and unheard by Russians. The 1999 French president, Jacques Chirac, addressed a message of sincere sympathy and condolences to all the catastrophe victims and their families. He also mentioned that France is following the situation closely and is ready to provide the Taiwanese people with the support and emergency aid they may need. The Japanese government pleaded $500,000 in aid, along with more than 100 rescue workers. Prime Minister Kaizo Obuchi offered his condolences on behalf of the Japanese people. A 4-member volunteer search and rescue team with 3 search dogs was sent from Slovakia, assembled, and arrived in Taiwan within 30 hours of the earthquake and provided services for 4 consecutive days. The costs for the team were covered by private individuals and corporate entities from Slovakia. The transport costs were covered by Eva Air, and the local presence and accommodation were supported and coordinated by Taiwanese authorities. The Mexican team of rescue workers was also involved in tackling the Tongxing building collapse and earned widespread praise for their skill and commitment. A team of 76 rescue workers was first dispatched by the Emergency Situations Ministry from Russia to help with the search and rescue efforts. Also, a medical team of 5 doctors and 12 combat medics was sent by the Singapore Armed Forces to provide medical support for 11 days. Amidst the chaos, in addition to the cash grant, the Korea International Search and Rescue Team, Chief Commander Park Chung-won, was deployed to the affected site for 2 weeks, and during the operation, the team rescued a 6-year-old boy who had lost both parents and his younger sister due to the building collapse caused by the earthquake. The boy had survived for 84 hours without external assistance, such as water and food, having been hit by a devastating earthquake just the previous month. Turkish NGOs had recent experience in search and rescue operations. A 15-person team from Turkey left for Taiwan within hours of news of the quake being received. Condolences were offered by Elizabeth II, who in a statement said that she was greatly saddened to learn of the terrible earthquake in Taiwan and the consequent tragic loss of life. A relief team of 6 people from Rapid UK, a disaster rescue group, was dispatched to help search for trapped survivors. President Bill Clinton of the United States issued a statement saying that his thoughts are with all of those who have suffered losses and may still need assistance, while also pledging aid to assist in disaster recovery. Despite the lack of official diplomatic relations with Taiwan, U.S. authorities liaised directly with their Taiwanese counterparts and sent an 85-person team to assist in the aftermath. Pope John Paul II of Vatican City also expressed his concern in his Angelus of the 26th of September, remarking that his thoughts have constantly turned to the beloved people of Taiwan as they recover from the recent quake and its devastating aftermath. While the outpour of support couldn't bring back the lost lives and properties, it strengthened the entire nation of Taiwan. While you are still here, let's journey through how Taiwan cleaned up her mess and reconstructed her poles and pillars. Taiwan's remarkable journey to recovery. On the 25th of September, President Lee Teng-hui declared a state of emergency in the affected areas, giving sweeping powers to local authorities to ignore the usual bureaucratic and legal restrictions on measures to bring relief to people and locations most in need. This was the first time emergency powers had been used since the death of former President Chiang Ching-kuo in 1989. Many charities, corporations, and private individuals contributed to the relief effort and the later reconstruction. Private donations directly to the government-run disaster fund totaled 33.9 billion Taiwan dollars, while organizations including the Presbyterian Church of Taiwan, Rotary International, Cathay Life Insurance, Dharma Drum Mountain, Yiquan Tao, the Tzu Chi Foundation, and various temple, church, and community groups all contributed to aiding survivors and funding reconstruction. The Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints provided both direct relief and translation services for the foreign rescue teams, while the Red Cross of the People's Republic of China contributed $3 million to the Red Cross Society of the Republic of China, which amassed a fund of 1.8 billion Taiwan dollars towards disaster relief. Following the election of President Chen Shui-bian in March 2000, the reconstruction policies were continued despite the change in the ruling party. Chen said in his inaugural address in May 2000 that his people experienced an unprecedented catastrophe last year, and the wounds are yet to be healed. He clearly stated that reconstruction has to cover every victim and every earthquake-affected area. One task that had to be undertaken was the setting of new land ownership boundaries in areas where the landscape had been significantly altered by the quake. The whole island was elongated about 1.5 meters in the north-south axis and compressed west-east by the forces unleashed. One solution offered to land issues was to offer landowners an equivalent parcel of government land not located on a fault line. You won't believe how Taiwan built a legacy from her trial. Keep watching as we explore these legacies. From rubbles to national innovation. Waterworks pipe bent by the earthquake, 2 meters in width and 1.8 centimeters in thickness, originally underground in Fengyuan, Taichung County, were exhibited at the Museum of Drinking Water, Zhongzheng District, Taipei. In Wufeng, a township in southern Taichung County, the damage was especially devastating. The village's Guangfu Junior High School lay directly on the fault line and was severely damaged by the quake. Today, the junior high school is the site of the National Museum of Natural Sciences 921 Earthquake Museum. A fault from the earthquake was discovered in Jushan Township, Nantou County, by a professor from National Taiwan University conducting research in the area in November 2002. To preserve the surface rupture, the Chelungpu Fault Preservation Park was established and opened to the public in 2013. Furthermore, a permanent fault shift in the Shigang district resulted in serious damage to the Shigang Dam, as well as the necessity of patching affected roads and trails with inclines to restore their usefulness. Two notable examples of this are the biking or hiking trail between Dongxi District and Fengyuan District, and Fengxi Road, which also connects these two districts. Some locals humorously call this new inclination Singapore. The 10th anniversary of the earthquake in 2009 was marked by commemorative activities in some of the areas affected. Taipei, Dongxi, Wufeng, Puli, Jiji, also called Chichi, and Zhongxing New Village, held various events to remember the victims of the earthquake, the rescuers who aided them, and the reconstruction efforts that followed. The Taiwan Chelungpu Fault Drilling Project, co-led by Taiwanese scholars Kuo Fong Ma and Yiben Tsai, and international collaborators in the US and Japan, drilled research boreholes to investigate the Chelungpu Fault. This led to multiple discoveries about the causes of the earthquake and empirical breakthroughs in seismology, most notably the first measurement of an earthquake slip zone. The drilling project also uncovered that the earthquake was in part caused by the movement of underground water. The team defined such earthquakes as isotropic events, an earthquake-like event caused by natural hydraulic fracturing. This finding has important implications for fracking operations. It was also a major wake-up call that led to key administrative reforms to improve emergency response and disaster reduction. According to Daniel Aldrich, professor of political science and public policy at Northeastern University, observers strongly criticized Taiwan's response to the 21st of September 1999 earthquake, arguing that it took hours for emergency medical response teams to arrive, that rescuers lacked training, and that the operations between government agencies were not well coordinated. As a result, the government passed the Disaster Prevention and Protection Act and set up 2 national centers to handle coordination and training for earthquakes. Are these proofs that the April 2024 Taiwan earthquake would also yield good legacies? Or have countries been supportive like they were in 1999? Keep watching while we further explore the trials and troubles from Wednesday's quake strike. Trials encountered during the earthquake. Emergency workers in Taiwan were thrown into a state of intense search and rescue efforts, looking for dozens of people who remain missing after the island was struck by its strongest earthquake of the century. The 7.4 magnitude earthquake hit Taiwan on Wednesday, 3rd of April, 2024, claiming the lives of at least 10 people and causing serious damage across the island. Commuters were traveling to work when the earthquake struck. Boulders came crashing down mountains, hitting cars and narrowly avoiding others. Over 1,000 people have been injured, while more than 100 are still missing, many believed to be in remote mountainous areas. In one remote valley, a drone discovered miners stuck on a cliff due to landslides that wiped out all the roads. The epicenter of the earthquake witnessed the most severe damage, with buildings partially collapsing. Concerns were high that aftershocks could bring down unstable buildings, leading to reinforcement efforts to stabilize them. The earthquake struck as children were starting their school day. Kevin Goyer, an American living in Taiwan, recounted his 8-year-old daughter's experience of how her teacher kept yelling that they should hide under the table. So when the earth started shaking, they knew exactly what to do because they had the hat on their desk. Despite the devastation, the death toll of 10 people seems surprisingly low, especially considering the extent of the damage to roads and buildings. Taiwan's preparedness for earthquakes has been credited for the relatively low number of casualties. After a devastating earthquake in 1999, Taiwan upgraded its infrastructure, established better building codes, and conducted regular rescue training. Residents have also been prepared through early warning systems and drills. In comparison, when Turkey and Syria were hit by a similar magnitude earthquake last year, the death toll exceeded 55,000 due to a lack of preparedness. Taiwan's proactive measures over the past 2 decades have undoubtedly saved lives. Rescue operations were focused in the mountains, with search teams scouring through landslides and working to clear roads and tunnels to reach those trapped. Scores of people are reportedly trapped at remote hotels, and the search for the dead continues alongside the efforts to rescue survivors. In the Taiwanese capital, the metro briefly stopped running, but resumed within an hour, while residents received warnings from their local borough chiefs to check for any gas leaks. Across the Taiwan Strait, social media users in China's eastern Fujian province and elsewhere said they also felt strong tremors. Residents of Hong Kong also reported feeling the earthquake. It was a hell of neighborhood mutual shock. The international community has been closely following the situation in Taiwan as the island nation continues to deal with the aftermath of this powerful earthquake. I know your ears itch to hear the aftermath of the Wednesday earthquake. Will it be a story of trial and triumph like the 1999 quake? I'd like to have your response in the comments. Don't forget to subscribe and turn on your notification bell to watch subsequent videos on the earthquake and more intriguing videos.